Today we're going to talk about the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. So, we're going to talk about some inventions that spur technological advances. It's the textile industry that will be affected first and transformed by the Industrial Revolution by 1800. Several inventions had come to pass to modernize the cotton industry. So in 1733, John Kay invents the flying shuttle, and this basically is a wood piece that you tie the thread to, and you can weave it back and forth through the thread. It's called a shuttle, and as you see, it's a boat-shaped piece of wood which you attach the yarn to, and you weave your cloth through the other cloth. James Hargreaves in 1764 invents the spinning jenny. It's a wheel used to weave yarn. It allowed the spinner to work 8 threads at one time. He called it the spinning jenny because his daughter's name was Jenny. So in 1769, Richard Arkwright invents the water frame. It used water power from rapid streams, rivers to drive spinning wheels. Think of the spinning wheels. You might have seen these in westerns. It's the big wheel on the side of a building that powers everything inside. Very much like the water frame on the back of a steamboat, if you think of that. The next one is 1779. Samuel Crompton invents the spinning mule, and basically it combines the features of the spinning jenny and the water frame to make thread that was stronger and finer. So the thread's going to get smaller and stronger because it's going to be more tightly wound. In 1787, Edmund Cartwright invents the power loom. It's run by water power, and it speeds up weaving. So what were some advantages and disadvantages of these new machines? Cloth merchants could boast profits by speeding up production. Needed to be run by water. The machines were large and expensive, so this took the work of spinning and weaving out of the house and into the factory. Progress in the textile industry spurred other technological innovations and inventions in Britain. I want to go back to point number 3. These machines, they're going to be used in factories. So with the Industrial Revolution, there are 2 ways to look at this. We go from handmade goods to machine-made goods, and you can look at it as we go from homemade goods to factory-made goods. In 1765, his name is James Watt. He invents the steam engine. The need for cheap and convenient source of power was met with this invention, and here are some pictures of some early steam engines and how they work. Basically, the principles do not change throughout time. A steam engine today would be built with these same concepts. So road transportation, John McAdam, he invents paved roads in the early 1800s. He equipped road beds with a layer of large stones for drainage. On top, he placed a smooth layer of crushed rock. Previously, rain and mud often made the roads impassable, and men were known to drown in potholes. Steam locomotives are invented by George Stephenson in 1825. That's his first steam engine. However, his most famous steam engine, the Rocket, he created in 1829, which you see here. This thing could fly. I think it carried 13 tons, and this thing was the reason it was called the Rocket was because it was so fast. It did 24 miles an hour, and people would literally gather in grandstands on each side of the train track, and they would watch this thing go by. with cargo and people. They would dress up in their Sunday best. This was a huge thing in the early 1800s. Think of it this way. When the train is invented, when the steam engine is invented, this will be the first time in world history that something carrying people and merchandise is used that does not eat. The impact of the railroad. Railroads spur industrial growth by giving manufacturers a cheap way to transport their materials and finished products. The railroad boom created hundreds of thousands of new jobs, both railroad workers and miners. Railroads boosted England's agricultural and fishing, or excuse me, boosted. The railroads boosted England's agriculture and fishing industries, which could transport their products to distant cities. They can go farther now because, like fish and seafood and agriculture have shelf life. They go bad after a while. By making travel easier, railroads encourage people to take distant city jobs. So, some things with the railroad here. We said this is the first time you could move goods and people with something that doesn't eat and you don't have to feed it. This is also like the 1800s version of what you guys have as social media and the internet. This connects people like it's never done before. This connects people with new things to consume, to eat. Fish in the inland parts of England. That hadn't happened before. Agriculture is being able to be moved out and around to urban areas where they didn't have agriculture before, or where they didn't have vegetables and stuff. These things can be moved now. So in a lot of ways, the railroad is like the 19th century version of your social media and internet today. Not to mention when people, before the railroads, people actually, the average person was born, they grew up, and they died within 10 miles of where they were born. So think about that, because today there are people just traveling all over the world, traveling all over the country. People are from different states, living and dying in different areas. So anyway, this completely changes the way we look at our families, the way we look at travel, and the way we look at settling down. So factory conditions, what you need to get out of this, they were very harsh. As you see, long hours and few breaks. If you want to know, about 14 hours a day. And you got about a 30-minute break for 14 to 19 hours a day. In some cases, you worked about 19 hours a day in the textile industry. So work is the same day after day, week after week. It's very monotonous. It's very boring. Injuries were very much a common thing. Frequent accidents, loss of limbs in the machine, loss of fingers, feet, arms, and just U.S. history in our second industrial revolution. We had, in 1882, we had an average of 675 work-related deaths a week in the U.S. These machines were dangerous. The lighting was bad. People couldn't see. And they were very dirty conditions. All these conditions happened over in England as well. England was before us, but all these conditions existed. And in the U.S. also, by 1910, I think it was 15% of all girls and 20% of all boys were crippled for life under the age of 15, meaning they've lost fingers, arms, parts of their scalp, things like that, because girls, it wasn't uncommon for them to have injuries due to their hair being pulled out. So anyway, these were very, very dangerous factories to work in. There was no job security. Workers could be fired for being sick, for working too slow, or for no reason at all. Women and children are paid about half as less as men. Kids get maybe a quarter to a third of what the woman was making. Why would you take advantage of a kid? Simply because you can, and we do today. Here's some boys in the coal mines. There's a young driver in the Brown mine. As you see, he works from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. By the way, the life expectancy for boys in the coal mines were about 10 years. So if you started at 10 years old, usually by the time you were 30, you were dead. Girls hauling coal in the mines. This is a young lady carrying a coal basket in the mine. This is a drawing of her. This is a girl weaving at a weaving machine in the textile industry. So here's some more pictures. Children at work. So just kind of put yourself in this young lady's frame of mind and look at the expression on her face and just think about what she's thinking about as she looks outside the factory window. There's boys in a mill. It's fish cutters. So the living conditions, as you see here, the living conditions, cities became more common and more populated. Some double or triple, and there's one example of one quadrupling in size. People migrated to the cities, especially in England. We are talking about this thing starting in England, but they are the ones that start this enclosure movement, the Enclosure Act. What is an enclosure? It's a fence. You fence something off and call it your property. And England's famous for two enclosure movements in the 1500s and the 1700s. And what this does is people used to live on land communally. In other words, there was no true ownership. They all shared the land. But as of the 1500s and 1700s, England said, we're gonna put a fence around it, and you got to get off. It's called the enclosure movements. Cities are dirty and dangerous. There's a lack of sanitation, no sanitation laws, no fire department, police department, no running water, and no sewage system. Some more pictures, like as this picture says, dens of death. There's a tenement building. There's a tenement, and you'll see these buildings a lot in England to this day. Guys, if they look dirty, they didn't bathe. They only bathed maybe once a week, if they were lucky. And keep in mind, there is no bathroom. It hasn't been invented yet. So, change in social structure. The traditional elite, aristocratic nobles, landowners, they're still in control. Capitalists, upper class, these are entrepreneurs. They use their money to buy and build factories, run large businesses. They will take over for the traditional elite eventually. The new middle class, these are professionals, investors, merchants. They're financially stable, educated, underlined, or it needs to be underlined, and they aspire to become upper class. Your new working class would be lowly, unskilled, mechanical, poor, and uneducated workers, and they will be taken advantage of. So family life changes, class and gender distinctions. The middle class families move away from the cities. They go to suburban areas eventually. Middle class women gain new roles in caring for kids at home. And they get, I wouldn't say new duties in the home, like cleaning the home and things like that, but they do have newer duties, because women had always, even on the farm, had been around the house. Higher wages and increased leisure time for some led to more consumption and mass leisure, popular newspapers, entertainment, vacations, and team sports. Some more pictures. Guys, there we go. We're going to have to pick up with this on the next PowerPoint.